went back and attempted to speak with him. So at that point, my understanding was it was still up in the air. I can be wrong. My understanding was it was still up in the air. Per Your Honor's request, we had discussed as many things ahead of time as possible. The discussions with the state were, and it was very clear for both sides, that we were not going to be objecting and not asking this court to litigate Mr. Mitchell's Instagram records because the state was going to call him. Yes, with them coming in, there were portions that we intended to use with the understanding that that is what would come out in terms of evidence. His messages would come out, so we would want another section in there. If the first section is in there, we would want the second section in there. But he's certainly not our witness. The evidence he presents is not a theory of the case that we would have brought to the table. And so now the state does not want to call him, and I think we're faced with a confrontation clause issue because we relied in good faith on our discussions with the state. We didn't go through and take the court's time to say this is conditionally admitted based on this happening. So we simply relied on what they represented to us. We had the evidence, came in, it was read out. I contacted the state last night to say, hey, I'm not sure what you want to do about this. We feel in a position that we are forced to ask for a mistrial. We really don't want a mistrial. We'd like to be able to rely on what we were told. And like I said, we're checking to see if there was something definitive on the record. But if Mr. Mitchell is not testifying, then we feel we have no option but to ask for a mistrial.
Would the state like to be heard on that?
I guess the state's response, Your Honor, is that the state, after the lunch hour, indicated to...
Talking to the mic. Pick one up, maybe.
The state, after the lunch hour, indicated to the court, as well as counsel, at least for Mr. Ryan, indicating that we were not going to call Mr. Mitchell, basically because he told not only the state but defense counsel that he wasn't going to say anything when he came onto the stand. That was the same thing that was told to us by Mr. Uten. And my recollection is that it was an either or is what the understanding was. It was we were going to maybe call either Mr. Uten or Mr. Mitchell, and yesterday we decided neither. So I don't know how there could be a confrontation issue that's being claimed today. If we decided to put Mr. Uten up yesterday and not Mr. Mitchell, the records would have still come in the same fashion without Mr. Mitchell testifying. More importantly, before any message came in as it related to Mr. Mitchell, the state indicated to defense counsel that we were not calling Mr. Mitchell. We indicated that to the court as well. And
I don't remember y'all indicating anything to the court until the end of the day, y'all. But what I was told by the deputies was that the state had very clearly said they can be transported back. We are not calling either of them. And that was at or right after the lunch hour that I was told that. I asked yesterday morning, is this an either or? And yesterday morning, the state was definitely indicated, you know, it might be one, it might be the other, it might be both. We don't know yet. We still need to talk with everybody. And then we just went on with the trial, and they didn't, you know, after lunch they went back because y'all had made that determination, and you certainly communicated that to the deputies with regard to transport. And you are making the representation that you also let the defense know that. Did y'all disagree that the state let y'all know they didn't intend to call either witness?
Excuse me. At the very end of the day, I had inquired to the court, said, you know, discuss what's going to be the order tomorrow, and I said, well, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Uten, checking. Mr. Kokomo took a look, and before lunch, what was represented to the court said, you know, who are we going to get to? And they said, we may not get to him today. So
that was before lunch.
That was before lunch, and then we came back in, and everything was public.
And everybody I mean, not everybody, but counsel for Mr. Ryan and counsel for the state spoke with, I guess, Uten and Mitchell over the lunch break.
We went back. He didn't want want to speak with us, that's fine. We went separately from the state.
Right.
We didn't discuss anything with the state about who would or wouldn't be called at the lunch, and I don't believe before we started in the afternoon. That's not my memory. The announcement before lunch was we may not reach him today. They spoke with him. Obviously, at the end of the day, I still thought they would be called.
My recollection is after lunch, I was sitting there. Ms. Abbasi said, so you're not calling Mitchell? And I said, no, we are not calling Mitchell. That's my recollection before Mr. Howes began testifying after lunch, and we didn't call Mitchell. And the messages came in unobjected or not objected to, and there's been no conditional admittance of evidence that's been permitted
There has not.
or agreed to by any of the parties during the trial of this case, at least at the time that I've been here. So it's my indicator, be the state's opinion that any objection to the messages that came in are waived at this point.
Your Honor, our response is, we have difference of memory. That's fine. It is what it is. If the state knows they're not going to call him going into it, I don't think it's fundamentally fair for them to publish and then say, ha, you missed it. I don't think that's good faith. As far as, no, we didn't conditionally admit it, because we've done everything we can, at least for Mr. Ryan, to avoid taking up the court's time. This is what it was. We all agreed. We all understood. So that's how we proceeded. And now here we are, and we're stuck in a position we don't want to be in.
Well, I'm not quite sure what to do with this. I have a representation from Mr. Abadi that the state communicated to defense counsel that they were not intending to call Mr. Mitchell or Mr. Uten, and that was communicated prior to Mr. Hiles' afternoon testimony in which this evidence came in. And Ms. Abbasi, you're saying, well, it's not my recollection, but I could be wrong. That might be. So
I will not say my memory is perfect. I have no memory of having that conversation after lunch. I'm not going to say, Mr. Abadi's. I can't promise you my memory is 100% accurate, and I'm certainly not getting up and saying that Mr. Abadi's lying. I'm not going to do that. But I have no memory of that conversation at all. And, as I said, I brought up at the end of the day, what's the order of the witnesses? When are Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten coming in?
I don't remember that.
I had brought it up when we were asking about witnesses because I didn't know if the sheriff needed to bring them over. And that's what was coming up.
Are you saying that you, on the record, asked when Mitchell and no, you didn't?
That was at the very end of the day. We were just
Amongst counsel?
I believe Your Honor was on the bench when we were discussing just who are we getting to tomorrow.
Yeah, I asked who we were getting to tomorrow. I don't recall you saying, when are we getting to Mitchell and Uten?
Well,
I don't recall the two of them being mentioned at all at the end of the day.
I know I asked the state at that point, oh, you're not calling him? No. And at that point, the evidence had already been admitted.
I'm asking you, did you make that statement on the record?
I don't believe so.
I
We
don't
can check the
either.
record, but I don't think so. I think the last statement on the record was we may not get to them today.
I don't recall that statement on the record or off the record. This is all a surprise to me this morning that now there's some debate about it, because everything I knew post-lunch yesterday, although through the sheriff's office, not through the state or the defense, was that a decision had been made and communicated that neither of them was going to be called. I mean, I can't really do much else with I don't see a basis for a mistrial. So we need to deal with Wooney Lee's evidence. And y'all are just going to have to communicate or put more things on the record or something if you want to avoid misunderstandings in the future.
That's fine. We'll litigate everything first.
Or just put on the record your understanding.
Yes, Your Honor.
So if the understanding was these will come in if Mitchell testifies, just say, we talked about all of this and we don't have any issue as to, X, Y, and Z. And these things we've agreed are going to come in if Mitchell testifies. And then there'll be a record of it and everybody will know what they're dealing with.
I mean, I guess the state can make the suggestion. I mean, we can call him and the state will have no questions for him and then defense counsel can cross him if that will solve the issue.
I mean, at this point, he might have yet again been sent back, even though my staff was making Herculean efforts this morning to try to get him over because somebody wanted him. At the bench, y'all said, nope, that's fine. We don't need him. And by y'all, I mean you, Miss Abbasi, said, that's fine. We don't need him. If y'all aren't calling him, fine. So we just communicated to the sheriff's office, they don't need him. I don't know where he is at this point.
Okay. And Your Honor, Mr. Kokomo checked at the end of the day. I did inquire for the court, who do we need tomorrow, and gestured over to the door. And then that's when Ms. Love said, we've talked about it and we're not calling him.
All right, well then, that's even more of a record against your recollection.
I guess I don't understand. There would not have been any reason for me to ask about whether people were coming from the back after the evidence had already come in if I knew he was appointed to be testifying.
So you're saying you pointed towards the holding cell doors?
Right, asking about witnesses for tomorrow.
All right, well, that is no record upon which to grant a mistrial. So let's get to the Wooney Lee evidence.
We sent it.
What are we doing on the Slack quad?
Sent the email on yesterday at 9 a.m., Your Honor.
To whom?
Well, you know what? I don't think Ms. Percival is on it, so let me forward it to Ms. Percival. I'm sorry.
I can't hear what's being said.
We're forwarding the reduced.
We're just trying to get the whatever evidence we're going to litigate now up.
All the attorneys should have received it yesterday at 9 a.m.
Right, I'm just saying the court doesn't have it.
Yes,
so.
I just worded it wrong.
Can counsel approach for a minute, please? Yeah, well, whomever wants to come up. We've got the jury, and they've been waiting for 20 minutes already, and I just think it's not considerate of any of us to litigate things that they can't hear and just make them sit around. So we'll just do if y'all have to take somebody out of order, you have to take somebody out of order, but I'm not going to have them wait anymore. Call your next witness, and we'll get to the Wooney Lee evidence when we can get to it. Okay? All right, I'm going to get the jury out. Who's your next witness going to be? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. My name is Al Hogan, A-L-H-O-G-A-N, and I'm a detective with Atlanta Police.
Good morning, Detective Hogan.
Good morning to you, sir.
Can you tell the court how you are currently employed, sir?
I am a detective with Atlanta Police. Currently, I'm assigned to General Investigations out on Fulton Industrial, but prior to that, I was a homicide investigator for about 10 years.
And Detective Hogan, can you tell the jurors how long you have been employed with the City of Atlanta Police Department?
I have been certified police officer since 1987. Had a couple of different jobs with the sheriff's departments and with the air marshals, but anyway, and landed in Atlanta about 15 years ago.
And you said you had been a police officer since 1987. Prior to working with the City of Atlanta Police Department, where were you in law enforcement?
I started in the jail in Fayette County, was there for a few months. They put me on the road, was certified then in 1987. I worked as a road deputy in Fayette County. I was promoted to detective, worked undercover narcotics locally, and then I was assigned for a good many years, 10 years or so, to the DEA task force at the Atlanta airport. We did drug interdictions there. In between there, I spent a brief period of time as a federal air marshal. This was before 9/11, and that job wasn't for me, so I came back. And that's when I went on through with DEA, and then eventually landed in Atlanta about 15 years ago.
Now, you a few minutes ago told the jurors that you were assigned with the homicide department for 10 years.
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors, were you assigned with the homicide unit here with the City of Atlanta Police Department back in February of 2019?
I was, yes.
And can you tell the jurors a little bit about, I guess, how you're assigned specifically to any homicide case that you're working here in the City of Atlanta?
It is the luck of the draw. We're all in a rotation. There's a big board in the office. There's about 17 of us that are in the rotation. About 6 of us that work cold cases. At the time, I was in the rotation, and your name is on a magnetic strip with a label on it, and everybody's name's in a row or in a column. As murders occur, the person from the top catches the murders. He's the lead, he or she's the lead investigator, and they go to the bottom, and everybody moves up. On this particular day, I was at the top.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors on February 23rd of 2019, were you dispatched or called to come out to the location of 50 Mount Zion Road?
Yes, I was.
And can you tell the jurors what was the reason you were dispatched to that location?
There had been a homicide, a criminal homicide, what they suspected to be a criminal homicide, and they asked homicide to come to work the case.
And is that address 50 Mount Zion Road? Is that here in the City of Atlanta, Fulton County?
It is. It's in southeast Atlanta.
Okay. And when you, I guess, can you tell the jurors, we've heard about different zones that are within the City of Atlanta. Which zone does this location fall within?
Zone 3.
Okay. And the Zone 3, does that include the area of like Cleveland Avenue?
It does, yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors when you arrived to the incident location, can you kind of describe for them what kind of property it was? Was it a business? Was it a residential location?
It's an apartment complex.
Okay. And were you the first to arrive on scene?
No, sir.
Can you tell the jurors? Now, with not being the first to arrive and being, I guess, assigned as the lead detective because you're number 1 in the rotation, can you tell the jurors a little bit about the first things that you do when you interact with other first responders who arrive before you, other officers and detectives?
Sure. So they, just by the act of being there and doing their job, they've gathered some information that may be interesting to me or help me with my investigation. So of course, I get there, observe how things are laid out. They have delineated the crime scene and what they think the crime scene is, so they mark that out with yellow tape, trying to make that a pretty big area. This particular one was a fairly big crime scene. So I could see that when I pull in, and then I speak with the 2 officers that are watching the crime scene log. I speak with the general investigator who has started the crime scene drawing. I talk with the ID technicians that are there and I assist them and make sure that any evidence that I see on the scene that I'm interested in or like for them to gather or document, I make sure they do that. And I just try to glean as much information from what they have from them so I can help me further my investigation.
Now, after speaking with other members of law enforcement who were on scene before you, can you kind of describe, I guess, the layout? You said that this was an apartment complex or a residential complex. A little bit about the layout of the complex as you first observed it when you arrived.
Yeah. It's a large complex in 2 phases. There's a Mount Zion Road. Obviously, it faces Mount Zion. The address is 50 Mount Zion. Then there's a phase, I'll call it phase 1, which is in the front that's up closest to Mount Zion. There's a creek that runs behind that phase 1 is a creek. So there's a bridge and an access road down one side of it. I think it's the east side of the property that goes past over the creek, and then there's a large recreational area, a big grass field, and then the playground for kids. And then the second phase is in the back, but there's only one way in and out to get to the second phase. And it's in the back of the property across the creek. This crime scene encompassed all of the access road to get to the phase 2, and all the way up into a pretty good portion of phase 2 where the road runs up into the parking lots, the access into the phase, for the buildings in the phase 2.
So in a second, Detective Hogan, we're going to put up State's Exhibit 11NN, which was previously admitted into evidence.
Yes, sir.
Can you see it on the screen?
I do.
Okay. So do you see at the top of State's Exhibit 11NN, there's, I guess, a red line that's drawn. It's right by where actual the time is, where it says 9:33 a.m.
Right there you're talking about?
Yes. Can you tell the jurors, is that building that you can kind of barely see at the top of State's Exhibit 11NN, is that the first phase or the first building of the complex?
That's correct, yes.
And then do you see in the middle of State's Exhibit 11NN, it looks like something, looks like a brown kind of, something that's separating the grass in the middle of State's Exhibit 11NN?
Right here.
So, in the middle of State's Exhibit 11NN, you see trees, and there's this.
Oh, that's the creek.
Okay.
There's the bridge.
And then it's the area you described, I guess, where the playground and things, the recreation area.
It's under here, under the trees, back over here in this area.
Okay, so it's towards the, I guess, the left side, kind of middle of State's Exhibit 11NN.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, now you described to the jurors briefly about the second phase or the second half of the apartment complex. Do you see that phase in a State's Exhibit 11NN?
I do. It's this phase here.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors what areas in State's Exhibit 11NN, if you can see it, were pertinent to your investigation in relation to the crime scene?
Immediately when I pulled up, I parked in the parking lot up here, if you can imagine. The phase goes up Mount Zion Road would be up here. I parked my car outside the crime scene tape and walked in. I checked in with the crime scene technician. Immediately I could see that there was a blue car resting against the fence, and I think there was a big rock that it ran into right here, where there was some stuff on the ground and stuff on the car. And as I walked up, of course, that's going to be pretty interesting. It's not supposed to be there. So as I walked up, I saw that it was part of the crime scene. There was blood in the passenger seat. There were bullet holes in the car. There were shell casings on top of the car. Items of clothing were on the ground and on top of the car. And then as I walked further past, I could see there were some tire tracks that were through the grass here, beside the building here, as well as more shell casings that were kind of scattered out in this area over here. And then they had crime scene tape stretched out across here and across there as denying the access into the crime scene.
Now, you talked about crime scene tape and things of that nature. When you arrived, had the crime scene been fully secured?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jurors a little bit about how that's done and why that's done?
Yeah, well, we're trying to preserve evidence. Everything in there may have something of value to us that we could use to further investigation. So obviously we don't want anybody to tamper that either on purpose or by accident. So we try to protect it. We try to make it as big as the officers that responded made it as big as they thought they needed to protect everything that I just described to you. The shell casings are easily kicked or moved. We don't want to touch anything that may have DNA or fingerprint evidence on it. There's just lots of things we need to try to protect so we don't damage our own investigation.
And Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 48NN through 67NN. If you'll just flip through those. Have you had an opportunity to go through those prior to your testimony here today?
I've seen them before, yes.
And as you're flipping through them, I guess what are State's Exhibits 48 NN through 67 NN?
These are all crime scene photographs from the scene.
And do the photographs in State's Exhibits 48 NN through 67 NN fairly and accurately depict the crime scene, 50 Mount Zion Road, when you arrived on February 23rd of 2019?
Yes.
Around at this time, the state would tender what's been marked as State's Exhibit 48 NN through 67 NN.
Those are admitted.
Now, you talked about the area of, I guess, where you said it was a blue vehicle,
Yes.
and in your investigations, did you determine what type of vehicle it was?
I do. It was let me look at my notes here for the year model, but it was a Dodge Charger.
Just looking at your report.
Yes.
Help refresh your recollection?
Say again?
Is reviewing your report, will that assist you in the refreshing?
Yes, I'm just trying to get a 2014 Dodge Charger.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, when you arrived and began to investigate and look around the Dodge Charger, was it occupied? Was there anybody in it?
No, sir.
Okay. Can you tell the jurors, you talked about the tire marks that you had seen. Can you describe the condition of the vehicle as you began to investigate and process the vehicle?
Well, we had run the tag, or somebody run the tag, and it came back stolen out of Cobb County. It did have some defects in it. It had several, which appeared to be bullet holes to me, from my experience. And there were 12 of them total. Again, there was a large amount of blood in the passenger seat, front passenger seat, and some clothing. A baseball hat was on top of the car. There was a projectile that fell out of the hat when we picked it up. And then there was, other items inside the car that were gathered and documented.
In a second, Ms. Knight is going to put up State's Exhibit 15 NN, which has been previously admitted into evidence. My apologies, 16 NN. And in 16 NN, Detective Hogan, can you kind of point out for the jurors the areas in which you just described as defects? I think you said 12 in the Dodge Charger.
Yep. You can look pretty close. You can see whatever's kind of out of place. In this particular image, my memory serves right. This white is a defect. You can see the different whites that stand out pretty readily, and you can see why I'm assuming they're bullet holes. But in that particular picture, I see four defects.
Okay. And you said that around the car, was there, I guess, ballistic evidence also located, I guess, on the car and surrounding it?
Yes, there were shell casings. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how many, but there was 2 or 3 on top of the car. I think maybe that's what that is. But there was up here were spent shell casings. They'd been fired and ejected out of the car, out of the gun, and landed on top of the car.
And can you?
Objection, Your Honor, that's speculation.
Sustained.
Well, you said they were spent shell casings. How did you know that they were spent?
They didn't have the bullet in them anymore.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, as you're kind of walking around and observing and processing the scene, are you being assisted by members of the Atlanta Police Department's crime scene tech unit?
Yes, and they were there before me, and they started working the crime scene, so they were really very familiar. They showed me a lot of stuff, and then I just went in behind them and made sure that everything they showed me I was interested in, and make sure that everything that I saw they didn't know about, and make sure they knew about it to gather it.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, as it relates to your working in conjunction with the crime scene techs that were present that early morning, what type of shell casing do you remember was identified as the shell casings found around the car and in the general area?
On the car, and then a little further up on the crime scene, they were all smaller caliber shell cases, like 9 millimeters.
Okay.
Later on, we did find some 7.62 as well, some larger caliber.
And you said around the car, and then I guess a little bit further up from the car. I'm going to show you what's been admitted as State Exhibit 52NN. Can you tell the jurors when it comes up what to your recollection, the yellow placards in this photo are marking or representing?
Sure. You can barely see them on this one, but there's a little yellow square there and another one up around the corner. Those are placards. They have numbers on them. ID techs, when they document stuff, they document it right where it says. So they put the placards up next to or adjacent to the pieces of evidence, and then take pictures and document where they found it. Later on, after they do that, then they'll gather the evidence, and it'll be delineated on their report by that number, or whatever number it was nearest to the piece of evidence. But this, if you can imagine, if you were in this picture, if you turned around directly 180 degrees, that's the access road that goes out to the front of the property, and then the blue car is down right behind you.
Now, if you are looking at the right side of State Exhibit 52NN, and it looks like a raindrop that reflected off from the photo, but you see where there's a vehicle or a red car kind of in the middle right-hand side of State Exhibit 52NN?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, if you continue to go straight down the access road and take a right where that red vehicle is, can you tell them where would that take you?
That takes you into the parking lot in between two of the buildings in the complex.
Okay. And is that the buildings that I guess would be the front buildings, the first one we saw that was closest to Mount Zion Road, or the back set of buildings?
That's right.
That's what?
The back set,
Back side. Okay.
phase 2.
Now, you referenced or talked to the jurors a little bit about the fact that there were additional shell casings that were found in a different area in relation to the vehicle.
That's correct.
Can you kind of describe to the jurors, I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 10NN. And using State's Exhibit 10NN, Detective Hogan, can you kind of orient the jurors as to the area that you described that you found the second set of shell casings?
Sure. Well, I told you about the shell cases that were on top of the car. Those were 9 millimeters. There were several more that were scattered around in the roadway and the grass over here in this area. Then there were several that were found in the grass. These are the larger caliber shell casings over here. Over here at the corner of the building and around and on top of the car were the 9 millimeters. The larger caliber 7.62 were in this area over here.
And if you can recall, in that area that you just kind of described and oriented the jurors to, where the second set of shell casings you found, how many did you find? If looking at your report will refresh your recollection,
Yeah, let me look and see.
Just,
I don't
af-
remember.
if and when your recollection is refreshed, just look up and I'll re-ask you the question. If it helps, I can direct you to maybe page 4.
Yeah, if you would, because it's not jumping out at me.
Yeah, if you look to page 4 of your report, and if that helps refresh your recollection towards the bottom.
Oh, 15. Thank you.
All right.
15 7.262 caliber shell casings.
So it sounds like after looking at page 4 of your report, your recollection's refreshed?
It is refreshed.
Okay. And you described them to be a larger type of, or larger caliber of ballistics or shell casings. Can you describe to the jurors a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, a handgun is a smaller caliber, usually somewhat smaller caliber. Police carry 9mm or 40 calibers. Each caliber is a different size. So each shell casing is going to be a different size to accommodate whatever size bullet it shoots. For example, the 9mm the bullets are about as big approximately as the end of your pinky finger. So the shell casing has to be the size for that to fit in. A 7.62 is normally associated with a long rifle, like an assault rifle. And it's a much bigger bullet. It has a lot more gunpowder behind it. It shoots a lot faster and longer. So the shell casing for that is going to be larger and distinctive for that caliber of weapon.
And based on your investigation, is it, or based on what you saw and observed, were, I guess, all of the shell casings that you saw as larger, the 7.62, kind of grouped in one area?
Yes,
And
they were all
then-
found in one area.
The shell casings that you described earlier, a few minutes ago, that you said were smaller caliber or 9mm, were those all kind of grouped within, one small area, separate and distinct from the 7.62?
The majority of the shell casings, the 9mm were discovered here. The only exception to those would be the ones that were found on top of the vehicle where it was abandoned.
Now, can you tell the jurors, do you see the red line that kind of travels throughout State Exhibit 10NN?
The long one?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, based on the investigation at that point, the shell casings that you had found in different areas and the tire marks that you described, why, I guess, that red line is there and what it represents?
For me, that was, I created this. So, I know it's pretty rudimentary, but I'm not a computer guy. The little red dots it's not accurate, but it just indicates where the shell casings were found. This was a line based on my investigation of where the victim said they had parked. And this is the access that they took trying to get out when the shooting broke out. So there was a shooter that came out here when it started shooting. They drove out. Another shooter down here drove past, walked, and you can see the tire tracks in the grass. Drove off the road, back on the road. The car was not functioning, so they rolled to a stop here and then exited. It's just a line to kind of show where I thought they went when the incident happened.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked and tendered and admitted into evidence. It states that it's 59NN. And in this photo, do you see kind of the grouping of the yellow placards that are scene within States of 59 and N?
Yeah, same procedure as what I described earlier. Where there is a shell casing, they put a placard, and next to it is a corresponding number that indicates that particular shell casing. This is coming out from the Rick Breezeway, and this is where they, all the different placards indicate the different shell casings that were found.
And do you see kind of in the middle of State's Exhibit 59 and then towards the, I guess, the breezeway? Let's see if we can get this out of your way. There we go. In this area right here?
Yes.
Are those placards, are they also the larger caliber shell casings?
Yeah, they were all the same shell
Okay.
caliber. Yeah.
And are photographs taken of each placard from, you know, a far away distance or a full range distance, mid range, and then close up?
Yes.
Okay. To your recollection, was that done in this case?
I wasn't present, but I'm assuming they do it the same way every time.
Okay. And for time and efficiency, is that what we see in State's Exhibit 60 NN through 67 NN?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after you completed kind of walking through the scene with members of the City of Atlanta's crime scene unit, while on scene, did you get information that two males had contacted 911 indicating they had witnessed what happened at 50 Mount Zion Road?
I did.
Okay. And I don't want you to tell me what anyone said as I go through the next questions. As a result of that, did you go to APD headquarters just down the street here off of Peachtree?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, when you arrived, did you speak to the two males?
I did.
And without telling me what they said, can you tell the jurors who you spoke to that early morning?
Sure, is Bernard Mitchell and Rodney Uten.
Okay. And can you explain to the jurors, without telling me what they said, kind of the circumstances and of the setup of the interview? Let's start with that.
Oh, it was just an interview. There's two different areas at the headquarters that we speak to people in. One's the interview room. It's just like if you guys came in and had something to tell us, we put you in the interview room and we speak with you. The other is what they call an interrogation, or when they're in custody. In those rooms, you're secured, chained to the floor, and both rooms are audio and video recorded. Both types of rooms.
And you said they were in the first room, the interview room that you described?
They were in, yes, witness room.
Can you tell the jurors, do you interview them together or do you interview them separately?
They were done separately at different times. Same, one after the other.
And after speaking with both Mr. Uten and Mr. Mitchell, can you tell the jurors, do you speak with a female, Miss M. Smith, after speaking with both Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten?
That's correct, yes.
And can you tell the jurors, do you speak with her that same day, later on February 23rd of 2019, or at a later date?
It was on the same day, on the 23rd.
Okay. And can you kind of explain to the jurors in relation to when you arrived to the scene and kind of worked and processed the scene with members of the police department, about how long after you arrived did you begin to interview people in relation to your investigation?
Multiple times in the report. It all came together fairly quickly once it started rolling. Let me see if I denoted it. notated in my report. Do you know specifically in the report where I need to be looking?
Let me ask you generally this question based on your recollection. Was it a matter of hours that you began speaking with witnesses, for example, Mr. Uten and Mr. Mitchell?
It was all in the morning time, yeah. It was like 6 in the morning when I got to the crime scene. It was well before lunch when I was talking to Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten.
Okay. And when you spoke to Ms. Smith, can you tell the jurors kind of the setup or the arrangement for that interview?
That was insane in the witness area. It was later on in the day. I think it was after lunch, thereabouts. But same, voluntary. She came in, and I spoke with her.
And when you're speaking with Ms. Smith, is it just you and Ms. Smith, or are there any other members of your team that are also present?
Detective Casey was with me.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, as you began the interview with...
You're talking about Mariah, right? With Ms. Smith? Or with the other two?
So I'm talking about Ms. Smith.
Okay, yeah, Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Detective Casey was with me, yes.
Yes. So can you tell the jurors, when you began the interview with Ms. Smith, can you kind of describe for the jurors her general demeanor that early morning?
Sure, yeah, she was upset, nervous, crying, young girl, and you can imagine, she said she was a witness to a shooting and a murder, and she was upset.
Objection, proper bolstering.
Now, as you began the interview, can you tell the jurors, how did you start?
Sure, well, I started all the same way. I introduced myself, and we start talking about, and I asked, talking about the situation that they witnessed, and I asked for their statement, and she began by telling me a series of events that she relayed to me at that time that I knew were not to be correct based on what I knew from the crime scene.
Okay. And when you say knew what not to be correct in relation to the crime scene, can you explain to the jurors, I guess, what you mean by that?
Yeah, she was saying that this victim had been shot by one of his companions. The way she described it, it was not possible based on what I knew from the crime scene. So I brought that to her attention. After some consoling and some speaking with her by me, she realized that she changed the story to what the truth was, which we knew that she was not telling the truth.
Okay. And as you continued, I guess, to confront her with the physical evidence that you had located on the scene and through your investigation while on scene, did she provide you with names or nicknames of individuals she knew to be involved?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And do you recall, or can you tell the jurors the nicknames that she told you of the people she saw shooting that night?
Yes.
And if referring to your report would help refresh your recollection, by all means.
One was Little Rod and Bolly.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, as she described what she saw, did she tell you, or tell the jurors what she told you about the firearms that she saw Little Rod and Bolly having?
Judge, Your Honor, I'm going to object that this is improper bolstering. She's already testified to this.
This is impeachment, Your Honor. She testified she couldn't recall at times during her testimony as it related to the firearms, what they look like.
Can you approach from
you you've been describing the fact that the first part of the interview you had with Ms. Smith, she gave you a number of facts and scenarios that were not aligned with what you knew to be consistent with your investigation of the crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
And as your interview with Ms. Smith continued, I believe you indicated earlier about the statements that Ms. Smith made going forward about what she observed on that early morning of February 23rd of 2019 as it related to the shooting. The facts that she relayed to you after you confronted her with what you knew to be true about the physical evidence on the crime scene, the facts that she was giving you, did they become consistent with what you knew through your investigation at the crime scene?
They did become consistent, yes.
Okay. And as you continued to interview Ms. Smith, did she continue to provide you statements as it related to what she saw and heard that were consistent with what you've described to this?
Your Honor, leading the witness.
Ruled based on our discussion at the bench.
So let me see if I can remember what I was asking you. So as she continued to describe things that she saw and heard and observed on the crime scene that early morning when the shooting was occurring, were those statements consistent with what you knew that you found on the crime scene earlier during your investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, we talked a little bit about she was able to provide nicknames. Can you tell the jurors, without telling me what she told you, but was she able to provide you with Instagram handles or usernames for the two people she gave you nicknames for?
Yes.
Okay. And as a result, I guess in conjunction with that, was she actually able to pull them up and show you photographs as it related to the person she knew as Little Rod?
Yes.
Okay, and I want to show you what's already been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 23NN and 24NN. While she's pulling it up, I will give you a physical copy so you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
And while Ms. Knight is pulling it up, if we can get the technology to work, are those the photographs that Ms. Smith was able to provide you in relation to the person she knew to be Little Rod?
That's correct, yes.
And can you tell the jurors, do you see her signature on those photographs?
I do.
Don't pull it up. And can you tell the jurors what date is her signature on those two photographs?
The 24th of February of 19.
Okay. And was Ms. Smith able to do the same thing as it relates to the person she knew to be Mr. Bali?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, after receiving this information from Ms. Smith as it related to who she saw shooting, can you tell the jurors, were you able to determine the identity of the people she knew to be Bali and Little Rod?
Yes.
Okay, and who were those people?
Little Rod's name is Rodelius Ryan Jr. Bali's name is Damon Blaylock.
And let's see. Now, before we move on from Ms. Smith's interview, can you explain to the jurors, so during Ms. Smith's interview, you described how you confronted her with the physical evidence as it relates to the statement she made initially at the beginning of the interview. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell the jurors, when you confronted Ms. Smith with the fact that what she was saying didn't make sense with what you already knew, did you tell her the identities of the people who were shooting?
No.
Did you, before speaking to Ms. Smith, have any idea who they were?
I didn't know him from a can of paint. No, sir.
And was that something she was able to tell you based on what she described as what she saw and heard that early morning on February 23rd of 2019?
That's correct. Yep.
And while you were interviewing Ms. Smith, did you provide her with any facts as it related to the identities of Mr. Ryan or Mr. Blaylock during that interview?
No, sir.
Okay, and was that information that she was able to provide, or did she provide you information that assisted in your investigation in identifying both Little Rod and Mr. Blaylock?
That's correct.
Now, after speaking with Ms. Smith, can you tell the jurors, did you attempt to identify another female described to you during Ms. Smith's interview?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors, who was that?
Her nickname was Brazen. She was with Miss Smith.
And if, your report.
Tyhera Hartfield. Oh, excuse me, that's her mom. Oh, yeah, Tyhera Hartfield. That's right.
So it sounds like using your report refreshed your recollections?
Yes.
Okay. And in your identifying Miss Hartfield, can you tell the jurors, based on your investigation into Miss Hartfield, what her living situation was?
She was a runaway, listed as a runaway at the time.
And ultimately, before, let me ask you this question. Based on the information that you've talked about here today, can you tell the jurors, did you make charging decisions?
I did.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, did you swear out warrants for the arrest of Mr. Ryan and Mr. Blaylock?
Eventually I did, yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, did you ultimately get to speak with Ms. Hartfield?
I did.
Okay. And without telling me what she said, did you, I guess, speak or interview her in a similar fashion that you've described as it relates to Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Uten, and Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Okay. And during your investigation, can you tell the jurors, did you also receive a social media posting as it related to Mr. Ryan hours after the homicide?
Yes.
Okay. And was that something that you used and utilized in your investigation in taking out the warrants that you've described?
Yes.
One moment. Aaron, I don't have any further questions pending redirect.
All right, are there defense questions for this witness?
There are. I do want to make sure I can get a hold of at least one of these snippets.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
Coming into today, have you had a chance to review the interviews you did with the witnesses you spoke to?
Not all of them, but yes.
Okay. You haven't had a chance to review them?
I haven't reviewed, I reviewed Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten's recently. The others have not.
Okay. All right. So I want to start. You've been an officer for quite a while, yes?
Yes.
And so you know that when you are getting information from people, it is of the utmost importance to make sure it's accurate, right?
Yes.
And that's one thing you were doing with Ms. Smith, is confronting her with facts to test whether what she was saying was accurate, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And especially in a situation kind of with young people, they may not always be fully forthcoming in the beginning, correct?
It's not limited to young people, but yes.
Right. Especially if they think there's something they could get in trouble for, correct?
Yes.
All right. And the folks that you were speaking with in this situation, they were not, well, the two young men you spoke with, they were not lawfully allowed to have weapons, were they?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So that's something they theoretically could get in trouble for if they admitted to it.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're speaking with them, when you're speaking with Ms. Smith, you're asking questions to make sure you can verify things. One of the things you told Mr. Mitchell you would do was get his Instagram records, correct?
I may have. That doesn't come to mind off the top of my head, but it would be something I would do, but I don't remember if I told him that.
Would it help refresh your recollection to see a copy of a transcript from that interview?
Sure, yeah.
Right. One moment. Here we go. All right. I'm going to direct your attention to page 19 here. If you could quietly read that to yourself. Let me know when you've had a chance to refresh your recollections from that.
Your Honor, before he answers the question, I'm going to object to hearsay. What Mr. Pogan said during the interview to anyone would be hearsay. Out of court statement.
He's on the stand. He can repeat what he said.
That doesn't make it not hearsay, but
I mean, I can ask whether he asked somebody.
I think it's not hearsay in this circumstance, so overruled.
I mean, in this circumstance, it would be being,
That's overruled, so.
so were you planning on getting Mr. Mitchell's Instagram records?
I may have been. It's hard to say. This is a lot of years ago, so it's part of my tools that I use for in each or any case that I have that I work. If there's an opportunity to pull those, and I need those, then yes. But I don't remember if I wrote a warrant for his Instagram or not.
Okay. You said if you have the opportunity, you certainly had the opportunity, right?
Yes.
Okay. And with those, if you had them, you could come back to him and say, hey, was this true? Was this not true from what you told me, correct?
Yes, I could, yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten, they were both cooperative, correct?
Yes.
So if you wanted to follow up with them, they gave you no indication that they wouldn't speak to you or anything like that. They were readily available.
Yes, not at the time they were cooperating with me that day, yes.
You didn't attempt to contact them any other times, though, did you?
I don't recall doing so, no.
Okay. So in this case, do you recall what search warrants you did take out?
No, not all of them, no.
Okay. Do you recall taking out warrants for Instagram records?
I do.
Do you recall whose records you requested?
No, I got little rods. I got Bally's. And without going through the index on my report, I can't tell you exactly, but I know I got little rods and I got Bally's. I got Rodelius Ryan's and I got Damon Blaylock's. May have gotten Mariah's and Brazy's as well, the Tyara Hartfield and Miss Smith.
Okay. What was your purpose in getting those records?
It's any information there that might help with the investigation.
Okay. Did you look at those records?
Not personally, no. I looked at some of the pictures. It comes in a format. Again, as I indicated, I'm not a computer guy. I'm not even on social media. I gave that information to somebody who could put it in a format that was easier to read, and then those people looked through it, and they let me know what they found.
So it wasn't for you to get more information. Someone else was supposed to get more information.
The information is going to come to me. It just didn't come through me.
So at what point did you get the information of what was contained in those Instagram messages?
When they gave it to me. I don't know what day it was.
Who's they?
I don't remember who the analyst was that did the examination of those records.
Okay. And the examination of those records, I would assume you included in your report?
Some of them, yes.
Some of them. Could you let me know then when? I assume if you put them in your report, it says then when you got them, correct?
It says when I put it in the report. Let me see.
I mean, that's something you would put in the report, right?
One that jumps out at me was from February the 26th of 2019. Somebody sent me an Instagram post on that day, and it was a short video that showed Mr. Ryan riding in a car.
Okay, but that's not the Instagram records, right?
It's from Instagram.
That's not the Instagram records for which you obtained a search warrant to get so you could get more information, correct?
I haven't verified it, but if it came from his Instagram and I got a search warrant for his Instagram, then yes, it would be in there.
Right.
I just got it before I got the search warrant records back.
I'm sorry, if you could repeat that last part.
It was posted. Somebody saw it. They sent it to me. If my search warrant had not been executed and the information sent back to me at that time, it would be included in both records, but I got it before the search warrant records came in because somebody sent it to me right after it was posted.
Okay, I think a second ago, because you said you didn't confirm it, right?
You're going to have to, I don't understand what you're saying. I've confirmed it. Yeah, what are you talking about?
Well, I think About the content of the messages, you said you did not confirm with the records.
I just said I'm assuming.
Right.
If it's in his Instagram records, I received it before the records came back from the search warrant. I'm assuming that that information that I received that day before the records came back would be in the records when they arrived to me.
Okay. So without those records, having looked at them, there was no way for you to go to Ms. Smith or Mr. Mitchell or anyone else and say, hey, you told me X, Y, Z, but your records say something completely different. Right?
I did not do that, no.
Okay. You could have done it though, right?
Yeah, sure.
And that would have been confirming, right?
Sure, yes.
I want to ask you about what you testified to earlier about the actual crime scene. Mr. Rabati asked you questions about where you found certain things. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you answered questions about where you found those 7.62 shell casings, right?
Yes.
But you didn't actually find those casings, did you?
No, I did not.
Those photos, you weren't there when they were taken, right?
No.
You never saw where those 7.62 casings were.
Not physically, no.
So when you say you found them, you didn't find them. Someone else did.
I said they were found. I'm not sure that I said I did.
Okay. When did you learn about those casings?
Later on the same day that the murder happened. I was at the office when I got the call.
Okay. And when you spoke with Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten, were you aware of those casings?
As I recall, it was around the same time. I don't remember exactly the sequence of events, but I spoke with them later on in the morning. It was sometime around the same, a lot of things were happening at the same time, that we got the call about the shell cases. That's one of the reasons I did not physically see them, because I was busy at the office. So I asked the responding officer to collect them and supervise them. But I don't remember the sequence of when exactly they came in.
Okay. Would it help refresh your recollection to see a copy from your trial testimony?
Sure.
I'm sorry, not your trial testimony, the last proceeding, several proceedings ago.
Okay, sure.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention to page 1076 from the prior hearing. Also turn to page 1078 if that's helpful as well.
Okay. All right, so what's your question again?
If when you spoke with Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten, you were aware of the 7.62 shell casings?
I was aware that they described to me 2 shooters, but I don't recall if I knew about the shell casings at that time. I may have, I don't remember.
You said that they described to you 2 shooters?
Yes.
Okay. You've got a transcript in front of you, so you've testified about this before, correct? This matter?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't recall attorneys asking you at length whether anyone besides Ms. Smith mentioned 2 shooters?
I read here that they were asking me about that, yes.
Okay. And your testimony was that Ms. Smith was the only person who said there was 2 shooters, right?
Yes. That's what it says here.
I mean, when you...
Wait, before we get too far around here, let's make sure we got the right context.
Do you want to flip to page 1,100?
No, let me read these first.
Okay.
On page 1076, as I recall, they were asking me about my interview with Ms. Mitchell, and I had mentioned to her that I had 2 sets of shell casings. They were trying to determine if she...
Okay, well, I don't need you to testify about what someone else was trying to do.
So what I'm saying is context matters. In this particular instance, I was describing my interview with her, and in the process of the interview, when I was confronting her with the evidence, I told her that I had 2 sets of shell casings.
Yes, I understand that.
You said page 1100?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So having reviewed that page, Mariah was the only person who said there was 2 shooters, right?
According to that transcript, yes, ma'am.
That was your sworn testimony under oath, right?
That's what I said. Yes, yes, yes.
All right, so that was the truth that you said it then, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to back up for a moment. I think you said Mr. Mitchell and Uten, they told you about not 7.62, but a weapon which would have fired larger shells. Is that right?
Yeah, they described a long gun coming out of the breezeway. Yes.
Okay. And when you were speaking with them, that was not consistent with the scene as you had seen it, right?
Again, I don't remember exactly when I got all the information about the shell casings. So at that point, I was getting his statement, and I took it as he gave it to me.
Did you not previously testify about the shell casings? I did not know about it when I interviewed Mitchell and Uten.
Okay, well, if my recollection was that then, I don't remember that now. If I didn't know about the shell casings then, if that's what I said, then that's what I said.
Okay. But you didn't confront them with what, at that time, would have been their testimony inconsistent with the scene, right?
No.
Okay. And they both told you one shooter. The number of shooters they told you was not the same as Ms. Smith, correct?
That's the same question, just worded differently.
We've already been through this.
I'm going to overrule that one.
Bernard Mitchell described the shooter coming out of the breezeway, and also the shooter when he was going around. He was right beside he described the person right outside the car, shooting in the car.
So that would be.
Dreads and a hoodie.
So that would be he described to you two shooters, based on what you just told me.
Yes, based on my just reviewing my interview with him the other day.
Okay. All right, I'm going to have you take, so you don't recall testifying that Mr. Mitchell actually never said anything about two shooters?
I got a sneaking suspicion you're going to show me that I did. But as I sit here, I don't recall that, no.
You were able to review your interview with him, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You still have that transcript in front of you?
No. Oh, is this it?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
You could take a look and see if that helps refresh your recollection about whether he told you there were two shooters.
It may or may not refresh his recollection, but I'm going to object to hearsay with Mr. Mitchell. I'm going to object to hearsay.
This is impeachment of what the officer previously said.
I'll let you ask about whatever he previously said.
Do you have a page or an area that I need to look through? Exactly, it's a long interview.
No, sir.
How many pages are we talking about?
Can't see, maybe about 20. I can't see if that's right. It could be more. You know what? We can come back to it. We'll probably have a break and you can take a look and get back to me.
Okay, sure.
Cool. So when you went out to the scene at the time, you were looking to speak with other witnesses, correct? If there were any.
Originally, when I first got to the scene, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You were trying to speak with as many people as you could, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you had access to the cab reports and the 911 calls, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you had access to the 911 calls themselves, correct?
Eventually, yes, I did.
Okay. And anyone you spoke with, you would have put that in your report, correct?
Yes, most of the general information. I don't necessarily put all the details, but yes.
Okay, but like their name, right?
Not always. If they don't wish for the name to be included, if I can exclude them, I will.
Fair. But you never spoke to the 911 callers, did you?
No,
Even though you had their name and contact information, right?
that's right.
Even though you were aware that one of them wanted to speak to the police, right?
If I was aware of that, I would have spoken with them.
I'm going to approach you with what has already been previously admitted into evidence and marked as states 1NN Nancy.
Okay.
Okay. And that is one of the CAB reports you've reviewed, correct?
It appears to be a CAD report from the case. I can't say I reviewed it, but this seemed to be from the case, yes.
So you didn't review the CABs, or you did?
Well, I look at it, I verify that it's got the right address on there, and if there's any information as the case progresses, and if I need to get back in touch with anybody like a 911 caller, I would do that.
Okay. So you didn't see the...
And I would use the CAD report to get that number
Okay.
and name. In this particular case, I didn't see the instance to it. Didn't need it.
You didn't need to see the person who wanted to speak with you?
I wasn't aware of that person.
So you didn't review the CAB?
I looked at the front page. I didn't read every word. No, ma'am.
Okay. So you didn't listen to the 911 calls?
No.
Okay. So if you're trying to speak to as many witnesses as you can, why wouldn't you speak to the 911 caller who wants to speak with you?
Again, I didn't get the word that they wanted to speak with me, or I would have. My plate was pretty full. I talked to a lot of people when I did a lot of work that day.
Oh, okay. You were too busy.
Yes, I was busy.
Okay. So when Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten, no, let me back up. The photos of the 7.62 shells, you didn't take those, correct?
I did not.
Okay. Were they just sent to you? Is that right?
Yeah, they were included with the report, yes.
Okay. And so is it from those photos you pieced together, let's see the exhibits, say 10 NN that you've drawn a line on? Sure. 10 NN. You drew this line, correct?
I did.
Okay. And this Earth image or whatever it is, that accurately depicted the apartment complex as you observed it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and the line on the left side where it starts, that's your belief, that's where the 7.62 shell casings were?
That's correct, yes.
All right. I'm going to put up on the screen for you what has been admitted as 59 NN. I don't know if it is the sheriff's. Thank you. All right. So, looking at 59 NN, what is it you see next to kind of that entryway, exitway by the sidewalk to the building?
Well, I see a satellite dish and an AC unit.
Okay, AC unit. And then you were standing at that AC unit looking at the parking lot. What is to your right? We have a line of bushes.
I'm turned around here. I don't understand what.
If you're standing next to that AC unit with the AC unit on your right, you're looking at the parking lot. Do we have a line of bushes there?
Yes.
All right. So looking at 10 NN, officer, you said it was consistent. What happened to that line of bushes?
They're not there.
Okay, what happened to the AC unit?
It's not there.
So how is that possible?
Well, when I got the information from the officer, I memorialized what he told me, what he found. He said it's by the Y building. I was assuming that Y building was where I indicated right there.
Oh, okay, so
on
you
the
just
map.
assumed that.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
It's in the same complex. The picture with the shell casings is in the same complex. I think it's in the next building back in that little courtyard.
Okay. But so you didn't go out to the scene and see where those 7.62 casings were, right?
I've said that a couple times.
So you can't say for sure, actually, that 10 NN is even where those were found, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I can say they came from the complex, but
Fair.
exactly where in the complex, I don't know.
Fair. And with this image, I'm going to point you to, I guess I can't really point to it. That corner right there, right?
Yes.
That's where Ms. Smith indicated one of the shooters would be, correct?
I don't recall that.
Where do you recall she said the shooters were?
She said, if my recollection is correct, she saw somebody walking out of the breezeway.
Here?
Yes. I believe, yes.
Okay. So all those casings should be right there.
Yeah, but the buildings are very similar
Oh.
in design, and there's two sets. So there's a breezeway that goes through both sets of buildings.
Okay. So they're very similar. So
So it's easily confused, is what I'm saying, as far as locations, because the buildings look very similar.
okay. So you may have been easily confused, right?
I was confused, yes.
Okay. And Ms. Smith, during the earlier parts of her interview, she had only talked about one shooter, right?
I recall she said she saw someone with a long gun, and she heard shots. I don't recall if she indicated whether there's more than one shooter or not. I don't remember that. Should I refer
Okay.
to something?
So earlier on in the interview, or when in her interview, I think you talked about, she said some things which weren't consistent.
Yep.
And then you consoled her.
Yes.
And then she was more consistent after that, right?
Yes.
So when was it that she began telling you, back this up. At what point between those did she go from one shooter to two shooters?
I know when she described to me, she said she described the two guys that she was with, and she described each one of them having a different kind of weapon. I recall that, but I don't recall if she stated that she saw anybody shooting. She just stated that she heard shots and ran.
Okay.
Saw both of them with guns, but I don't recall if she said she saw them shooting.
My question was, when in her interview, before or after the consoling?
It was after the consoling.
Okay. Because before that, it was only one shooter, right?
I knew that story she was telling me was crap, so I really wasn't paying much attention to it.
Okay.
So I don't remember what she said.
And it was between what was the consoling? We'll go there.
What was what?
When you consoled her. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm a husband and a father. I've got a daughter. I just spoke to her in a fatherly tone, assured her of her safety, and calmed her down and encouraged her to tell the truth.
Okay. But she didn't start doing that until after she was told to, I think, sing her ass off, right?
I don't recall if that was said or who said it.
You don't recall that?
I'm not saying it wasn't said. I just don't remember who said it. Yeah.
Okay. And there were discussions during that interview about whether she was implicating herself, right?
I don't recall.
Whether she could be going home or not?
I don't remember that.
She wasn't concerned with, or didn't seem as though she was concerned about getting in trouble?
She was concerned about getting in trouble, yeah.
Okay. And so I want to back it up. She came in, she's telling you a bunch of things, they're not adding up. You console her, and then she is telling you something consistent with the evidence, right?
Yes.
Okay. But that part didn't happen until you were the first one to bring up that someone had a rifle, right? As opposed to just a small gun, right?
I indicated that there were two types of shell casings, a rifle round and a small caliber.
Okay. Before that, she had not described two types of rounds, correct?
Like I said, I haven't seen that interview in quite a while. I do not recall.
Okay. You're the one who brought up a second person there to ambush, right?
I described two types of shell casings indicating that it was two shooters, yes. Implication there is two shooters.
Okay. So you made that implication, and then we had two shooters, right?
Yes.
Okay. What more did you do to confirm what she was telling you?
And what, do you have an example that you'd like me to answer? Because she told me a lot.
Right. She told you about different things that Mr. Mitchell did or Mr. Uten did, right?
Yes.
And those weren't consistent with what you learned from them, right?
Yeah, they were fairly consistent.
Okay. So when you spoke to Mr. Mitchell, that's when you learned about him putting a gun to her head?
Oh, yeah. She did say that about him, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's the story I didn't believe her, so I forgot about it, yeah.
So it would make sense if she's telling you these stories that you would want to confirm them, right?
If it's the truth, yes.
Right. And she told you things about, well, let me ask you. You never went back to Mr. Uten or Mr. Mitchell and asked about whether everyone had been chatting together, like she told you, right?
Oh, no, they described in their interview that they had been texting with the girls.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant that everyone, the defendants, everyone came out and was chatting together before this happened.
I don't think that came out with Mitchell and.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So they didn't say it, she did, but you didn't go back and say, hey, this witness told me this. No?
No.
Okay. And you didn't go back and look at her Instagram records, right?
I don't think so, no.
So you couldn't confirm whether she said she'd been talking to the victim every day, right?
Bless you, the victim. No, I didn't.
Okay. You could have, though, right? Because you said you got a record, or you ordered them, did a warrant for them?
Yes.
Okay. And she told you about a specific type of van that Mr. Ryan's mother drove, correct?
Yes.
You didn't go check and see if she actually had a van like that, did you?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
And that's in your report?
I don't think so, but I did do it. I noticed it. Let me look see. It might be in the report. We went to go talk to his mother.
Mm-hmm. She was cooperative, right?
She was.
You didn't ask to search the van, did you?
No.
And that van would have been, based on what you were told, used basically as a getaway vehicle, right?
Yes.
So it could have a murder weapon in it, right?
Yes.
Could have gunshot residue all over the steering wheel, right?
No, unless it was shot from the car.
Okay. Those wouldn't transfer from someone's hands?
I don't know, maybe.
Maybe. But you didn't get a search warrant to check either of those things, did you?
No.
And within just a few hours, you had an address for Mr. Blaylock, correct?
I did.
And you didn't get a search warrant for that apartment either.
No.
So you made no effort to look for what would have been the alleged murder weapon, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That would have been useful, right? If you had that, that's great evidence.
I've worked 100 murders. I never got one.
Never.
Ms. Abbasi, let's pause for a minute and take our morning break. And if you want him to look at whatever that
Oh, sure.
portion was while we break? Okay. All right.
Sure. He's welcome to. And Officer, I'll hand you your other transcripts and you can look at whatever you need to.
And can I ask you to actually step outside if you don't mind?
Oh, sure.
Thanks. I've just got to deal with another matter. How about you start with whatever it is that you wanted him to actually, that you asked him on the stand about? Okay. I mean, you can give him all of them, but I'd like for him to start with the one that you specifically asked about.
They'll be here.
All right. Okay, so there's been some back and forth about the whole Mitchell, that's his last name, right, thing. And Ms. Abbasi, you said that you kind of gestured in a vague direction towards the holding cell door at the end of the day without mentioning anybody's name and asked who the witnesses would be tomorrow, which is now today, and the state's answer did not include either of those people. And then, of course, there was some point in time in which the state was maybe going to get Mr. Mitchell, and I don't know what they were going to do, put him on the stand, just, I don't know, as a concession to Ms. Abbasi, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, just FYI, Mr. Mitchell is here and available. I'm just letting y'all know that. And I kind of need to know before the lunch hour or whenever this next, the witness that's on the stand right now is over with. If he's going to be called, let's go ahead and call him next so that he can be whatever's going to happen and then transported away back to where he has been staying before this time.
The issue raised on the defense is his messages would kind of affect what sort of road we went down with the defense. We've already gone down that road.
All right.
The mistrial has been denied. There's no further, I'm no longer insisting at this point he be called. Whatever damage has been done has been done. So working with what we have.
Just wanted to let y'all know. Okay, so then, does the state want to call him? If not, tell me now, and I'll have him shipped back.
No, I think this line of hearsay questions has cured any sort of issue as it relates to a mistrial and confronting Mr. Mitchell, since she's been able to do it without Mr. Mitchell even testifying.
All right. Thank you. Let's take our break. Does anybody have a proposed instruction to submit? Or comments about the one that the court drafted?
I do, Your Honor.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can I just pull it up for a second?
Sure.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
On paragraph, it's in the alternative wording for
Right.
Mr. Kendrick. It states, hold on, I've lost my place.
And, honestly, I'm looking at it now, and it may not even be 100% applicable, that second sentence in the alternate wording. I had just noticed that in the other guilty plea limiting instructions, that was more the language, so I was throwing that in for y'all's consideration as to whether anybody would prefer wording of that type to the couple of paragraphs above that. But, yeah, I mean, whether another person has been convicted of the same charges isn't necessarily applicable anyway.
So, and my concern is that the Honorable Court's not addressing, yes, I understand that something could be used against, I'm just using his name, but Mr. Kendrick, not against the others, but
Right.
But then it says that you can use the other evidence, and there's no instruction that's only if the jury finds beyond a reasonable doubt that one or more of the persons entered into a willfully and knowingly. And
Right, but we're talking about overt acts. I mean, they're going to have to, that's another step or portion of what they're going to have to decide. And obviously, they're going to get full instructions at the end of the trial. So I'm not going to get into, here's how you're going to consider all of these different parts of the RICO count, you know?
I do understand, but as a listener, I guess, for a juror, they don't even get to decide the acts unless they first find it. They could do it any order they want, I guess, but they first find that there was a willful and knowing joinder of the conspiracy.
Sure, that's a part of what they're going to have to find as to each defendant before they can convict anybody.
And I'd like that language in any instruction, because otherwise, you know, let's assume that this trial ends, the state rests in December. That's approximately a month and a half, maybe 2 months from right now. Meanwhile, the jurors are being conditioned, in my words, from the Honorable Court's instruction, that, hey, yeah, we can use evidence against everybody except certain evidence, so I'm going to realize that this is against everybody before there's been no instruction, to my knowledge, in this entire case, that they have to first find that there's that a person joined the conspiracy. So
They're not supposed to be deliberating until the end of this case, the close of all the evidence, all of the jury instructions. So there isn't a danger of that.
okay, well, that's my problem.
All right.
Because,
Well, I'm not going to give them a full kind of mid-trial mini instruction on how to consider RICO. They're not supposed to be doing that yet.
okay, I'm not trying to say a full instruction, but just a line, maybe. I put it in.
I mean, I can say, you know, I'll give you further instructions later.